Hey everybody, I'm today here with Dave McFadden. How you doing, Dave? And thanks for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So we're trying to discover the origins of high school and youth rugby in Florida. You tell us first a little bit about your rugby career, of your own rugby career. How did
Okay.
you get into rugby? And
Yeah, I was in the Navy, 1982. Um, I was my ship was in the yards up in Charleston, South Carolina, and some guys were carrying their cleats off the ship, and I had cleats because I was on the team's flag football team. And I said, "Where are you guys going?" They said, "Rugby practice." And I thought, "Oh, can I come with you?" And I went and loved it. We scrimmaged that night. I had no idea what to do. The coach told me, if they get the ball, tackle them. If you get the ball, run. I was like, got it. And I loved it right away, and played for the Charleston Outlaws for 2 seasons up there. And then we moved, the ship relocated back to Jacksonville. I played for the Jacksonville Griffins for a couple of years. And then the Pelicans, when I got out of the Navy, I moved to Tampa. I played for the St. Pete Pelicans for 3 seasons, 3 years. And then I moved, relocated to Fort Myers. I played for the Old Gray, Fort Myers Old Gray for, I think it was 2 or 3 seasons down there. And then I moved to Atlanta and I played for the Renegades.
okay,
And that was the end of it. I was 31 at that point, and just decided to go ahead and turn in my boots.
the body said enough.
Yeah, I was, gets to where you play Saturday, you don't recover to Wednesday, and then you play again on Saturday and you don't recover to Wednesday. And when you're younger, you don't have to deal with those longer recovery periods.
So at some point, you decided to start a high school team. Tell me
Yeah.
how that happened. Why?
Well,
Why exactly? Why it was it your idea? Did you? Was it?
sure. Yeah, it was actually my son Jake heard that there were high school rugby teams in Florida, and he was always interested in it. He loved football and contact sports in general. He was playing lacrosse at the time, and he got a few of the kids from the high school football team that he played for interested, and he came to me and said, "Hey, if I can get enough kids, would you coach?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I will." And so it was really Jake that was the impetus to getting the team going.
That's a common story when about the kids pushing the dads. Hey, let's start a team.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened then? You at the time were you still playing with the Pelicans?
No, no, I was well into my 30s, maybe even around 40 at that time. So um, what we had was a group of about, I don't know, we had probably 10 or 11 or 12 kids that would come out and we'd play touch rugby. And when the summer came along, we didn't get to play any 15s that year. When the summer came along, I had enough kids to take, a number of them with me to sevens tournaments. And we went to a couple sevens tournaments. I think Taravella, I remember being nice enough to let some of our boys work in with their boys and play in a sevens tournament. And it was their first experience of any kind of rugby. And they were on fire for rugby after that. And they talked to all their friends when school started back up after the summer about starting a team. And we had our first practice. I think it was late November of that year of 2006. Yeah, and we had 50 kids at our first practice, but
Right.
I didn't do any of it. It was all, the boys who were really the boys who played sevens, that little bit of sevens with us were so excited about it. They got all those guys interested, and so we had a pretty great turnout for our first practice.
So how did that go? Because you must have been very surprised. Now you have 50 kids. Were you on your own, or did you have other guys helping you out?
No, I've always believed in, if a guy's interested in coaching, even if it's just to appear one time and coach, I always let them, because I'm always hopeful that they'll get interested in coaching and maybe get put more time into it. So the Pelicans supported us very well. They were nice enough to let us have the name Pelicans, even though we were in Tampa. and a number of the Pelicans active and retired players came over and helped us for several seasons, and also they helped with financing as well.
But you would practice in Tampa, right?
Yeah, we practiced in Tampa. Yeah, it was a good ways away from where the Pelicans practice.
Yeah. So these first weeks and month, almost all of these kids were absolutely new to rugby. You were starting from zero, other than these kids, this little group that had played some sevens.
Yeah, we had two kids who had played previously in their home countries.
Okay.
Initially, and but the rest of the kids, it was brand new to them. Mm-hmm.
Mostly football players, or you had a little bit of everything?
Yeah, heavy on the football side. We had some wrestlers and some kids who played soccer. It was kind of a potpourri. It was a little bit of everything, but mostly football players. Mostly from one school, Sickles High School in Tampa, which is a school that my son attended.
Okay, of course.
Mostly from there.
And how was the process to get these kids coming to this sport, which I think has some unique things within the culture? How was it? How hard was it to instill that into the kids?
The easy part, they loved it right away because a lot of them had never played a skill position in football, where you get to carry the ball.
Yeah.
And quite a few of them had never really been in a position to carry in a competition. And so they loved that part of it right away. So that was the real positive, that they got to carry the ball. Everybody got to carry the ball. Everybody had a chance to score. That was, they couldn't believe that. The hardest part was getting football mentality out of their heads. The taunting bit of it, we had to work on that quite a bit. And like little things like carrying the ball out of bounds, into touch. In football, you do that all the time. And I had to tell the kids over and over again, no, it's not, definitely don't want to carry the ball into touch. We had to work on that a lot.
What about the tackles? Because that's a big thing in terms of safety for the kids, right?
Yeah, that was early on. We taught proper rugby tackling techniques, to wrap, always wrap, to have your head behind the guy, which in football, they want you to put the head in front of the guy, or at least they used to. I don't know if it's still that way, but there was quite a bit of that we did at first repeatedly to try to instill proper tackling technique. Grabbing up high, we had to get rid of that. It took a bit of time to get the guys to think more along the ways of rugby than football. But you play a game and you go in and tackle the way you would with a football helmet and football shoulder pads on. It doesn't take very long to figure out that that's not the proper technique.
We shouldn't be doing this.
No, yeah, you get a couple of bruises on your head or stiff neck, and you go, I think I better listen to coach.
Yeah. So what would have been your first season? 2007.
Yeah, we played in 2007 as our first season. That was when that team picture that we talked about was taken. I had a good group of coaches from the Pelicans helping us out with that process. In fact, Guido Christianantis is in this picture. Yeah, there he is. He's on the left side of the picture there, second from the end. And Guido helped coach a lot. And he even started the Tampa Krewe U19 rugby team. But all these guys, this was a very consistent group of guys. Danny Coleman, I don't see Danny in here, but he came to a lot of practices and helped us a lot as well. Bobby Arce, I see there. John Foley. I can't make out who that is on the left. Let's see.
Well, we have names there.
So Jim is the one next to Guido there, and Jim's coached the Pelican men's team for many years as well.
right. At the time, this was the only high school team in the area, right? Or had at the
Yeah,
beginning it was just you guys in the
yeah,
St. Pete Tampa area.
yeah. We were the only ones up in the West Central Florida area. Luckily, back then there was a team out of Orlando as well, so that was our nearest neighbor.
And how did this first season go?
We did pretty well. We won a pretty fair number of games. We lost a few. Um, I can't remember if we made the playoffs that year or not, but we did. We had a reasonably good season. We won more than we lost. But Taravella was very strong. Naples was very strong then. That was the final season that Cam Dolan was on the team. And I'll tell you, Cam could have won a lot of games just by himself if they just put Cam out there. And against 15, it would have been unfair, really, for because Cam he was a dynamo even at the age of 18 or whatever he was then.
Yeah, of course. And let me ask you about in this first seasons the parents. How was that relationship? What would the parents tell you?
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 seasons we had, the parents were amazing. They went out of their way to help. They built goalposts for us. They would barbecue. So back then, after every game, there was a meal. We would host the other team for a meal, and we'd encourage the kids to mingle together, which they really never really hardly ever did. But we would always do that. I would always feed the visiting team, and it was a rule throughout the state. If you visited another team, they always provided some sort of food. And so the parents did awesome with that. When we had to travel for longer games, like down to South Florida, a lot of times the bulk of the parents would travel, and we'd get hotel rooms all together. And the kids would, after the game, would go swim into the pool, and the parents would hang out on the pool side and have, we'd eat pizza or something and have a few beers or whatever. And it was a really great experience with the parents we had back then.
And you had your son playing, right?
Yes, yeah, he
How
was.
how old was he when you started the first year?
Um, he was
2000.
15 when we first started, and he stayed with it. He played with us for 3 years before he graduated, and then he went on. He went to Wales after that.
Really? Did he continue playing in Wales?
He played in Wales for a whole season with the Tembe United Rugby Club and with a local college team there. Let him play even though he wasn't registered. So he played for 2 different teams at the same time while he was there. And then when he returned, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. And coach coach from Life had recruited him at a All-Star game, and so we went up and met with the life coaches, and he said, as soon as we were done, I said, "What did you think?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm coming here." And so he went to Life. He went to Life to play rugby and happened to get a degree while he was there.
Also, he played with Life. Huh? Great.
Yeah, yeah, he won 2 national championships and was selected All American. Played in New Zealand with the USA Rugby All American team.
Is he still playing?
No, he's a firefighter now. He retired when he was 31, I think. He
Okay.
played for the Krewe for a couple of years and just decided it was too big of a risk physically for him when he's trying to be a firefighter.
Yeah. So you guys seem to do pretty well because if you started 2007, this is the cup that Steve Young started that tradition when
Yep.
in with the first in 2004 when they started the league. So and this is a pretty awesome document because you get to know who you played and 11-10. So more than a close game. Do you remember this game? And how did you manage to in such short period of time get your team to be so competitive? Because you had a few teams that had been playing rugby already for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it was that we had some good athletes on our team. and they picked up rugby very quickly. Had a lot of support from, like I said, with coaching from the Pelicans team, the men's team coming and helping us. That helped a lot. We had a scrum machine, so that helped. But it was really, I got to say, it was, I taught the basic rugby. I'm not an expert rugby coach. I taught basic rugby, and the boys ran with it, and so it was really all on them. The success we had, I just made it possible for them to succeed.
This, I think, is when you won that championship, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we had a really good rivalry with Jupiter. We played them twice that year, and both games, the difference at the end was 1 point. So it was they were really good.
So the kickers, as usual, were important for that 1 point difference.
Yeah, Robbie Cribb was our kicker, and Robbie ended up playing. He was from Cayman originally, Grand Cayman. He ended up playing for the Cayman national team for many years after he graduated high school. He was on their sevens team and the 15s team. He was a captain of the team for a while. That's Robbie on the far right of that, the dark hair kid sitting that was standing there on the far right in that picture.
Okay. I think this picture is in Brevard.
No, this is from we were at Middle Tennessee State University playing the regional championships after we won the state championship. We went up there. We placed third. And that's with those National Guard jerseys that the military, they had a program where they'd outfit U19 teams around the country with kit, and that was from them. And there we are. I think we're playing
Brevard.
Red Eye there, I believe.
You are some big boys, huh?
Yeah, yeah. That was, you can teach kids to play rugby, and but if you don't have athletes, it's hard to win a lot of games. That's Steve Vertepney there. Steve was D2 All-American at FSU. I believe he was a fullback at FSU.
That's a game against Cape Pirates, I believe.
Yeah, that looks like the Pirates. Yeah, I think you're right. That's little Tommy Del Pino there. He ended up going to the West Point, playing rugby there, and then he left West Point, played rugby at Penn State. He was darty, really quick.
Do you keep in touch with some of these kids?
I do. I do. Not as many. I mean, over the years, it's kind of dwindled to some degree. But
of course.
I was talking to our hooker Saturday, the guy who was the hooker in the state championship game, and he's married and has one child with one on the way, and is moving into a house he bought nearby us. He's 36 years old or so now.
That must be really, really comforting for you coaches. That I know that you put in so much work in those days to get this thing off the ground, right?
Yeah, we did. It
was not only coaching; you had to pretty much do everything. And
right? yeah, there was a lot of onus on anybody who starts a rugby team. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done and organizational work that has to be done, and it's usually one or two people that do all that. But once it's up and running, the parents were, especially in the early years, were really great about getting involved and taking some of the load. It helps a lot when you've got good parental support.
For sure. Do you remember any special rivalry you would have in those years with any other team?
Well, one of the things back then, that was when Steve Young was the president of the league, and we would have our annual AGM meetings and talk a lot about sportsmanship and stuff. So, I mean, Jupiter was a great competitor. Naples was a great competitor. The Nomads were great competitors. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out, but there was some real good competition amongst us. But we tried real hard to take the spice out of the game, to make it to where the kids are playing rugby for the right reasons. It was a big focus back then. And speaking of Steve and the other coaches, though, they helped a lot to get our team going. They were very generous with helping us get going and supporting us as we grew. That was another thing. I mean, Taravella, the Trojans helped a lot. Steve and the coaches down in Naples helped a lot. So it was a brotherhood back then, and we did everything for the right reasons. And it was really a great league back then.
So what happened with the team? Because typically, I don't know if this is the case. We have this when the team starts. It's many times because the kid wants to play and happens to have a dad who can actually coach them, and they start the team, and then the kid stops playing or gets out of the program. How did this thing evolve? The Pelicans U19s once your son.
Yeah. So after Jake's final year with the program, his senior year, we became the Sharks, and I returned the name the Pelicans to St. Pete Pelicans because they had started a youth program over there. They were calling it the Red Tide, and I thought that doesn't make any sense. I've got to give the name back to those guys. They shouldn't have a youth team playing with a different jersey than the club that's there in St. Petersburg. So we became the Sharks.
So it was the same program, but you just named it differently.
Yeah, we just took different jerseys, a new logo. I changed the website. Wasn't a big deal, it really wasn't. It was the right thing to do too, it just didn't make any sense. As a former Pelican player, I wanted the Pelican team to have their own youth team. So Perry Dempsey and Ed Eschball were coaching the Red Tide back then, and I gave the name back to them.
And how long did this program continue under the Sharks?
We were the Sharks for another 2 seasons, and then things started going south with the team, and it was mostly the biggest problem was a lack of parental involvement. The final year, we had a parent coach meeting, and I'd send out emails to all the parents well in advance, many times too, reminders. We had one guy show up, and he when he arrived, I said, "Thanks for coming to the meeting," and he goes, "Oh, was that today? Oh, I can't stay." And so the parental involvement was it just fell right off.
Why do you think that happens?
I don't know the answer to that, Charlie. I tried to sort that out a lot back then to figure it out, but it was really the team. The dynamics of the team changed a ton when the parents stopped being involved. They weren't coming to away games. In fact, the experience that kind of made me hang up my coaching whistle at that point was that we had a game over in Fort Lauderdale, I think, or Miami. And I'd been asking the parents for a couple of weeks, sending out emails, telling the kids to make sure they tell their parents that we had to get all the players down to the South Florida for this big game, and that I thought it was dangerous for the kids to drive, that a parent should be driving. So to make sure they had a parent driving them. And the morning of, we got ready to leave. It was early, like 5 a.m. And my wife and my daughter, and little Tommy Delpino was going to ride with me and to go over there. And all of a sudden, cars start pulling up in front of my house. Door opens up, kid comes out and runs to our house, and the car drives away. And we ended up having to drive 3 cars. I drove a car, my wife drove a car, my daughter drove a car full of kids. Some of them didn't have any money in their pockets. So, I wasn't going to let them go without eating and having Gatorade and all that stuff. So, when I got home from that, I was talking to my wife and I said, I think this is going to be my last season. This is a bit much. And for several years, I didn't coach until the Tampa Krewe needed a U19 coach, so they called me and asked me if I'd coach for a few years there, and I did.
Oh, so you came back to coach another team?
Yeah, I coached with the Krewe U19. Christianuntis Guido was coaching over there originally, and um, was unable to continue. And he called me actually, and Guido's a friend of mine. And
What would this be like, 2014, something like that?
gosh, Charlie, I wish I'd have written it down. I'll be 65 next Saturday, and so I don't remember it. It was something like that because I haven't coached there now for at least 3 seasons, maybe 4. So it's been a while, but I coached there for I think 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
Was
but
was this team under within the Tampa club?
yeah, that was part of Krewe. They
Uh,
yeah they had the Krewe logo. The Krewe financially supported the team very well. They provided the jerseys. We practiced at the same facility as the men's team. We just practiced earlier,
yeah.
uh, and that was how they set everything up.
I mean, that is one of the things that I think really helps a program if it's under an established men's team that has been going on for a long time, because we've seen teams come and go. I don't know. I have a list like of throughout the years of like 40 teams from high school,
Mm-hmm.
and of course you see these teams pop up, and it's typically, because the coach's kid is playing, and it just pops up on itself, and they play 1, 2, 3 season, and then it disappears, not only because the kid stops playing, but because of the stuff you were saying, that you just get sort of isolated, and it's everything's on you. And
Mm-hmm.
when the teams run under a bigger organization, there's like more support to keep it going, and it doesn't depend so much on individuals, right?
Yeah, it does help a lot, and I would say that I used to go to the FRU AGMs, and I always spoke when I had the opportunity to the leadership about there needs to be a bridge between youth rugby and men's rugby, because some of these guys, when they get out of school, they're 17 or 18, and they're just not quite physical enough yet to really compete with grown men. And so I would like to see it where there would be a halfway there. Maybe they compete with college teams
Yeah.
during the season or something.
Like a U23. Well, that is an unresolved issue that we have, where we lose tons of players
Yeah,
coming out
very.
of high school. If they don't go to a college that plays rugby, they
Mhm.
pretty much stop playing.
Yeah, a lot of them never play again. We worked hard to try to even call kids who had graduated off the team a few years ago and weren't playing. I would reach out to them and try to get them to come play men's rugby. By the time they're 20 or 21, maybe they would be interested in it. And that was semi-successful. We were able to get some kids back into it, but so many came and played for us over the years, and both with Pelicans or Sharks or the Krewe, that didn't go on to play men's rugby, and it's a shame because some of them were pretty good players, but never went pursued it any further.
Were you involved in any capacity with the Florida Juice?
Only they didn't need any coaching. They had good coaching already. I had players that played for the Juice. Several of my players did. We went up with them to Pittsburgh one year. I went with them, but all I did up there was whatever. If they needed me to do anything, it would be like get water, or whatever. I didn't really coach at all up there, but that was Steve and Ox and Donnie and Bill Martz. Those guys, they didn't. There was 4 of them, so they didn't need me or any other coaches really. So, we were involved with the Juice as far as supporting it by sending players to the tryouts and things.
How do you assess that program over the years for the kids?
It was an excellent program. They did a fantastic job. They got really cool looking uniforms.
Oh, that's
They entered into really good tournaments, and they did a very good job with selections. And I mean, it was well run. Yeah, I was also involved with. I coached with the Thunder, the Florida. It was more like the FRU youth program than the Thunder, but it didn't compare to the Juice was the premier all-star team.
and what about any involvement with the union, the FYRU?
Yeah, I was on the board for when
Probably
Steve. Go ahead.
because probably when you came in, because my for what I know at the beginning, like when the first league 2004, there was no actual union. It was just these six teams agreeing on how to organize and set a schedule and play. And then it took 2 or 3 years to actually create the Florida Youth Rugby Union. So that may
You
have
know,
come like 2007, 8, the actual union.
I remember it being well organized even in 2007 because it was mostly the coaches. All the coaches kind of formed I guess an impromptu union. They called it the Florida Youth Rugby Union, and they all agreed on processes, agreed on sportsmanship being primary. Um, feeding it your visiting team when you played somebody, that was an agreement that all the coaches said, yeah, we'll make sure everybody gets fed, and um, and we'll travel. There was a commitment to travel because how fun is it when a team only plays home games or they won't travel more than
Yeah.
X number of miles from home. So we all agreed to do those things. So there was organization there, but I think it was loosely affiliated with the FRU.
At the beginning, yes. And speaking of travel, uh, was it by did it happen that at any point like teams would say, oh, you know what, we're not going to play this game, we just can't travel, or they would always travel?
It did happen sometimes when teams would struggle with numbers that they just wouldn't have enough. We played a few games where we gave some of our players to the visiting team or wherever we were playing, and so we could go ahead and play rugby. But there was a couple of times over the years where a team just didn't have enough kids to travel and would, especially for a longer trip, and call and say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to forfeit. And it wasn't the coach's fault. They just didn't
Yeah,
have, the recruiting is really, in my experience, the recruiting has been all on the kids. If they don't go out and, and can recruit kids from their high schools to come and join us, there's not a whole lot you can do with a website and with a grown adult man trying to get high school kids. It's much more difficult.
yeah, of course. Did you do you remember any individual cases of players where you have like seen what a difference the sport has been in his life?
Oh, tons of them. Tons of them. I mean, so I've seen a lot of the kids come through our programs go on to great success and doing important stuff, rugby related. Um, um, I think Anthony Calvo was the uh, director of college rugby for the FRU for a number of years. He was on that state championship team. The president of the Pelican Rugby Club for, I don't know, I think he's been their president for probably 6 years or more, has been Alan Gankar. He was one of the props on that state championship team.
He still is a president.
Yeah, he's still the president.
Alan is still the president.
Yeah, he's been a long time over there.
So he was he was a player for you?
Yeah, he played in that state championship game. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he played first for several years. Yep. Um, there's I won't name names, but there was a kid who came from a broken house, a broken home, that played for us. That I can't give credit to rugby exclusively because his grandmother was a saint, but he went on and succeeded in life. He succeeded and played rugby at Life University. He um, graduated with a degree there. He won a couple of national championships as a flanker. He is working now. He's also in the National Guard reserves. He's got a great job. They've got a house. He's got 3 kids, and so I mean, big success story there. But I think rugby helped him a little on his way. But he had a rough start to life.
Are you still involved with rugby in any capacity?
No, I'm out now completely. I've after I was finished coaching at Krewe, I just
it takes a toll, right? I mean,
yeah, it's a big commitment, and that's the way I view it. Is it's not a hobby; it's a commitment. To be at 2 practices a week and travel out of town for games on Saturday. Your Saturdays are they're pretty much consumed by rugby.
Yeah.
Washing all the uniforms afterwards, and
you did that also?
Oh yeah, and I lined the field before the games. When it was a home game, I was out there lining the field most of the time. Sometimes other guys did it, but a lot of times it was me out there by myself lining the pitch the day before the game. Yeah. And it's such a big commitment. I loved doing it. I thought it was very rewarding, but my time for doing it had passed. And also, I think guys who played more recently, like when I played rugby, we couldn't lift in the lineouts. The flankers could break away out of scrums. You could tackle. You couldn't tackle up here, but you could grab somebody and spin them around and slam them down to the ground. The tip tackles were perfectly fine. And so the game's changed a lot since I played. I don't know all the things that these guys know now so younger players who played in a more modern game would definitely have an advantage over coaching over me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this about it. It's like intriguing. Why do you think we don't have more kids playing rugby, specifically kids?
Yeah,
you just mentioned, one of the things that the guys were amazed when they started playing rugby from nothing was, especially the football players, I can actually get the ball and run with it and score a try.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why that hasn't been like a real growth over the years. Do you have any clue?
Yeah, I think there's several factors involved there. When the kids try to recruit kids, some of the comments that are real common are, well, you guys play without any helmets. You don't even wear a helmet or shoulder pads. That's crazy. So they think that helmets and shoulder pads makes you safer, which actually it doesn't. It probably makes it more dangerous, I would imagine. I mean, the concussions that you get in football, they're trying to get them out of there, but rugby has fewer incidences of concussion because we don't put our heads into everything. But parents think that rugby's crazy. Parents think, rugby's a drinking sport. That image of wild parties and stuff like that is still, any of the parents who went to college that are, have kids that are in high school now probably knew there was a rugby team on campus and probably saw them, how they behaved. And so some of that is carried out, the reluctance for a parent to get their child involved into rugby. But really, I think that when we recruited well, when recruiting was going well, it was because we had some alpha dog type players that the other kids at school looked up to. And they told other kids at school that they had loved rugby and why, and they were able to persuade them to go. If you don't have the kids that are viewed as leaders at school on your team going out and talking to other kids about it, then recruiting is very, very difficult then. The alpha dogs that are at school on the football team, if it's not an alpha dog recruiting them, they might not want to do it because they're the leaders there, and so that was the hardest part. You can put websites out there, and you can put do Facebook advertising. Kids aren't on Facebook anymore anyway, so that Facebook's
On
not
Instagram, no,
great.
it's Instagram and TikTok.
It's very difficult to reach those kids. We got youth rugby, or we got touch rugby into high schools in this area, and for a few years we were teaching kids how to play touch rugby, and we thought this will help, and it really didn't. Unfortunately, I guess they didn't play touch rugby enough at the school once we left to where the kids developed an interest. And so it's that's it. The culture of not having rugby be a big time sport in America, but football, you can make a lot of money if you're really good at football, baseball, or basketball. Those are the sports that a lot of the athletic kids focus on because they think they're going to play in the NFL or the NBA or the Major League Baseball.
The I think one thing that has harmed the perception of rugby is just talking about rugby and comparing it in any sense to football. I think that does a lot of harm because to be honest, you tell me how many things we have in common with football. Just name as many as you can.
The ball's shaped similarly.
Yeah.
There's somebody carries the ball and people tackle them. You kick the ball, you kick for points.
Okay.
There's a line of scrimmage in football.
Well, we don't have that in rugby.
Well, you have the gain line. The gain line.
Oh, the gain line. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Did you know that the first bowl games ever in America, first bowl games, were rugby games? It was between Yale and Harvard and Oxford, and so those were the first bowl games, and rugby spawned football. It came from rugby, but Americans, I guess, have to change everything to make it. But
you see, I don't really see too many similarities in the game, and it's just such a poor representation of rugby when you start by mentioning football, because immediately not only players but the parents, of course, will imagine a football game played without helmets and protection, and which is crazy. So that is really something we have to sort of get rid of and just explain rugby for what it is. Not even mention football. We can say we are the father of football, if anything.
Yeah, for sure.
And but I don't think it really does any good.
Yeah, I focused on when I had the opportunity to talk to a parent for the first time. I focused on the fun of football, of rugby. That not everybody's hitting everybody. In football, all the guys hit each other right away. In rugby, if you don't have the ball, you're probably not going to get hit. Most likely, you're relatively prevented from getting hit. So all the contact is focused on the one guy with the ball. But your son will get to carry the ball. He can be the star of the game. He can score. That is intriguing to parents that he can stay on the field the whole game or most of the game. Yeah. I've always tried to, when I have a roster of 23, I always try to play all 23 players because I don't want. My goal was always to make kids fall in love with rugby. That was my number one goal, more than winning. And so we'd go to away games, and my kids, the starters, would get mad because I'd put the reserve guys in for at least the last 10 minutes of the game at the very minimum, because I didn't want them to drive with me all the way to Fort Lauderdale or Miami,
of course,
Naples, and then not get to play. That I think if you focus on developing the love of the game, and it's, to me, it's a more fun sport to play than football. But I played football for 8 years as a kid, and I love rugby more.
What about with these conversations with the parents about the respect that the players need to have with the referee, with the opponents? Was that something that came up and parents were impressed or took notice?
There was the vast majority were we'd always have before the first game, especially because that was usually our best attended game by the parents. We would always talk, and I would hand out flyers, information about rules of rugby, the laws of rugby, the basics, knock on and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would say in it how important sportsmanship is, and it's important for you cheer for your son, not against the other guys. And some of the parents took that to heart, but some of them wouldn't. And there have been parents that I had to tell, look, if you're gonna keep talking like that on the sideline, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
Yellow card.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some, there's been some incidences over the years, and I don't know any team that was immune from it. But most of the parents took it to heart and did, because if you get the parents on the sideline, or the fans, because it could be younger people, but if they're inciting the boys on the field to be aggressive, to do things outside of sportsmanship, then they're going to hear that, and it's going to inspire them. It's going to, motivate them to do it. And so we tried always to keep that to a minimum as best we could.
Another thing that I have heard a lot in these interviews is the relationship between the coaches that seem to be like really good in those early years.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well,
and if you want to mention names, you can mention names.
Well, all of them, all of those coaches, they were fantastic. I've already mentioned Steve Young, but Ox and Bill Martz and Donnie over at Trojans, Bill Shelley with the Nomads, Ray Campion with Red Eye. See who else. I'm not gonna remember everybody's name. Jeremy Humphreys was with the team out of Orlando. I think they called it the Winter Park team. He was great. He had things going very well there for a while, and then it just kind of went away. Pip True was super. His team was very well organized, and so there were. I mean, all those guys. They were open arms, welcoming to everybody who was trying to get a team to go. They would do everything they could to support it, because they wanted the youth rugby to succeed in Florida, and they wanted to have teams to play, to expand. It was a great brotherhood of coaches. It really was. Everybody got along very well. There weren't any of these spats between coaches back in those, 2007, 2008, 2009. It was great.
You were on the same side of the sidelines?
Yeah, back then there was no rules about coaches' boxes or anything like that. So a lot of times we were on the same side. Sometimes we're on the opposite. It just depends on how the coaches set it up. But the animosity between teams was minimal back then. It was a lot better.
So, Dave, as a final question, what would be your reflection about what has rugby meant for you personally and as your role as a coach throughout all those years?
Well, I've enjoyed it immensely. It's been I found it to be very rewarding, even in the seasons that didn't go so well. Where it was a little rougher. I still felt like I was helping some kids to have an outlet for their, for sports, to fall in love with rugby. And so it always was rewarding to some degree. Initially, though, I'll never forget those first few years. They were so great. But, I loved it. I love working with kids. I love trying to help them find their way in life. So many kids today don't know what they want to do when they graduate high school. They really don't put a plan together, and they just kind of fester. Nothing's happening. And I've always encouraged them to be interested in playing college rugby if their grades would support that, if their finances would support that. If not, I encouraged them to think about the military, because I myself, when I graduated high school, I floundered. I didn't have much direction. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17 because of how stupid they were, And so I joined the Navy, and it helped me sort my life out a lot. And so I always try to help them find their way in different ways, whatever I can outside of rugby. And if their parents were tell them you can't play rugby because your grades have fallen, I supported that, because there's things that are more important than playing rugby in life.
For sure. Dave, thank you very much for your time. It's been a great chat. Thank you for what you have done over the years in establishing high school rugby in the States.
Charlie, I have to say I really appreciate the fact that you've gone back and interviewed all these other coaches. I'm honored that you chose me as one of your interviewees, but I think it's super important for the history of youth rugby to be out there, and really appreciate the work you do. Thank you.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you, man. Bye.
My pleasure.